in that theater, and the audience we have are the people that we interact. In other words, the people that we have relationships with. Okay, and what is interesting is that we as actors sometimes are fearful, and also our audience. In fact. Our audience are totally dependent on the performance that we give them. So what sense they make out of us, in other words, how they judge us, is based on our performance. So it's really interesting. And Goffman says the audience is always aware that sometimes it's not just a theater, but we may slip into, in other words, we may go back to our true characters. I really hope this is clear. This is really interesting idea, because part of this dramaturgical analysis or dramaturgical theory is what he calls the impression management. So we are constantly worry about how we appear to other people. This is going back to the looking glass self. Okay, so we're always worried about what impressions we give to other people, how other people see us, which end up sometimes doing us. So this idea of impression management. So the idea of a face-saving behavior is when we do something wrong and we risk our performance by trying to do something good. So this is basically a strategy to rescue our performance when we experience a potential or actual loss of face. So when you say something that is not appropriate or not nice, face-saving behavior is when you go back and you try to reiterate or recap what you said in a different way. We are almost there. We have about 4 or 5 slides left. This is a really crucial concept in terms of the social interactions and the idea of roles and the idea of social structures. The idea of how we communicate. So our communication is dependent on 2 things. One is the verbal and the nonverbal. The verbal it's well known, right? So what you say. The nonverbal, which is really interesting, that most of what we communicate and how we communicate is nonverbal. In other words, through our facial expressions, through our movement of heads, through the eyes, through the body, through the touching, through the person's space, and all of that. And I don't know if you know this, close to 75% of what we communicate and how we communicate is nonverbal. So it's a really interesting concept for the social interaction. And the primary function of the nonverbal it supplements what we say. So the idea of supplements, it adds to what we say. It also regulates our social interactions, and it also establishes. So if you touch someone with tender, that means that means you establishing something with them. You are letting them know about your feelings, but also you can establish a power over someone else. So it's not just tender, but it can also be an action of power. So how you overpower someone else through the nonverbal. So by looking at them, by positioning yourself in a particular way, and so on and so forth. Because with that idea of verbal and nonverbal comes the idea of personal space. This is something that is not people don't worry too much about here in the Emirates. But in the West, personal space is really crucial, which is basically saying, this is my space. So it can be your room, it can be your office, it can be your phone, it can be your computer, whatever it is. That means it's my personal space. It's a space that no one else should come into. And this is something we have a worry, we worry about here, but it's not too much, okay? And it's part of the social interaction. The last two slides that so we started with the macro, you remember the society and the groups and all of that. Now let's come back to the micro, in other words, the smaller, the controllable level of social interaction. And the first, there are about 6 things that I wanted to discuss with you around the micro level perspective when it comes to social interaction. One is the meaning, the idea of the meaning. Here, the social interaction, our meaning, the meaning that we make out of what surrounds us, is dependent on our gender, our social class, our race, our ethnicity, and so on. So the meaning is dependent on the kind of the category we occupy, the role we play. And that role is dependent on your gender, your social class, your ethnicity, your race, and so on. So so the meaning is really almost personalized meaning. Okay, when it comes to the social construction of reality in relation to the micro perspective, so we're always looking at the micro now. The social construction of reality is basically saying the meaning is subjective. Meaning is subjective. In other words, meaning is my meaning. So the social construction of reality is basically saying the meaning we make of what surrounds us is your meaning. It's my meaning. It's our meaning, but it's individualized, okay? So this is why if I ask a question, I will have different answers. Within the macro level perspective of social interaction, there is something called ethnomethodology, which is basically the study. So this is a word composed of 2. So ethno and methodology. Ethno and methodology. Ethno comes from the Greek word ethnos, which is a tribe or a group, and methodology is the study, the systematic study, right? So when you combine the 2, it means that you're studying one group for a long time. You're studying systematic study of a particular group. Basically, that's what it is. Studying the common sense knowledge people use to understand situation. Okay? So the last slide is dealing with dramaturgical analysis, which is basically the theater that we enter into is a kind of a theater that each one of us enters into individually. So there is no common theater. There is no theater that everybody gets into at the same time. We enter that theater and we do different performances depending on who we are, which is pretty much linked to the idea of the sociology of emotions. So we are always wondering about how to express ourselves, when to express ourselves, and why we should express ourselves the way we do. And when it comes to the nonverbal communication, basically how we individually transfer what we mean non-verbally. Okay, so transfer of information without the use of speech. How we transfer those the impressions or the non-verbal communication that we're trying to do individually or separately. Okay. So to recap, let me just go back very quickly. I wanted you to take away the idea of social structure and social interaction. So those are the two major concepts that we dealt with: social structure and social interaction. We said the idea of pattern is really crucial to the social structure, and I gave you the example of, if you look at it, the idea of it's here. Okay, let me just, yeah. Okay, so let me just not waste your time. So the idea, the key word here is the idea of the pattern of social interaction, social groups, and social relation to form a particular group. The different components of social structure: the status, the roles, the groups, and social institutions. I'm not gonna go over this one more time because you can always refer back to the video and replay it, okay? But for the social groups, we said it has to have 2 or more people. They interact on a regular basis and they have a relationship or investment among themselves. The formal organization, the social institution, and I said the idea, the key word here, the key words, the beliefs and rules, and these beliefs and rules, they create. It has to be organized beliefs and rules. They create they are created to meet certain basic needs of society, and these rules and beliefs, they create roles and groups that also work to meet the basic needs of society. We have 5 basic social institutions: the family, the religion, the education, the economy, the government, and politics, and each one of them has a particular role, so you can relate that to them. Durkheim and his notion of solidarity, and we said the social solidarity is basically a division of labor. Each one of us knows exactly what is his or her expectations, and that can be mechanical or organic. The idea of the social interaction, so it's a group of people interacting and responding to each other to create human relationships. The really crucial concept, the social construction of reality, is basically reality is what we think it is, and those beliefs that we have, they impact what we end up seeing and what we end up how we end up behaving. The idea of the situation and the idea of self-fulfilling prophecy. This is a really crucial concept. That is a false belief you believe in. You act according to that belief, and that becomes your reality. Dramaturgical, very beautiful way to think about our lives. So our lives is a kind of life is the theater, and we are actors in it. And our problem is that we're never given full script, so we're always improvising. And the audience we have, we're always worried about how they judge us. The idea of impression management, we are constantly worried about how others see us, and if we do something bad, then we always doing a face-saving behavior. That is, we give them better impression or a better explanation of what we have done. The nonverbal, this is always and the personal space, and the 6 areas of the micro perspective. Okay, so I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to give you I'm going to turn the last segment of the video on me again. I don't think I'm going to, so I'm going to leave it at this. Okay, So I want you to watch this video, study it, and you can stop it. You can, and when we see each other a week from now, I will explain what I mean further. Okay? So big hello from Barcelona, and very nice seeing you as always. All right, cheers. Bye for now.